What's up, Cerebral football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. And as the title indicates for today's topic, guys, I wanted to talk for a few minutes, really in a larger scale, about the rotation along the defensive line, kind of how we're going to plug some of these pieces in, what some of the video evidence showed me about Vic Fangio's scheme and what I can kind of bring to you guys to present to you. And there's one big looming question that we all kind of have to answer here, which is, look, our pressure rate kind of dipped on us. I mean, I don't think it was just a pressure rate. I think coverage and pressure go hand in hand. I think that there was a lot of internal things going on with the team. I think there's a lot of things. It's more than just the pressure in itself, but we had an issue getting to the quarterback late into the season that can't be denied. So I think one of the big looming issues, one of the big looming questions, if you will, it's around Bryce Huff. I mean, can Bryce Huff step up into kind of this premier pass rusher role? And can he get the job done, right? Can he be anywhere in the stratosphere what Haason Reddick was for us in those clutch moments? Because the one thing I'll say about Haason Reddick that I think goes unsaid about him is that when we really needed it, he was the guy that really found a way to get, pressure at the right time. And everyone keeps saying, like, yeah, Trevor Lawrence dropped a lot of those footballs in the rain, right? Mishandled the ball. But go back and watch that game. Who was always the person applying the pressure that caused Trevor Lawrence to have a mishap with the football and put it on the ground? I don't think that can be understated. But the first thing I want to do before we jump in here is I want to talk about what I saw, what I could see from the film from Vic Fangio, and just kind of talk about what the defense is going to look like. So to begin with, I will tell you right now, Vic Fangio doesn't run as many penny fronts, 5 linemen, guys, penny fronts as we saw from his predecessors, right? So from like the Jonathan Gannons and those type of guys, right? The guys that kind of imitate his system to an extent, right? That they borrow from it. He doesn't run as many penny fronts as them. However, on early downs, he runs penny fronts. It's definitely on his film. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you guys. It's what I pulled up from his film. I went ahead and I took a unique angle here. So what I did is I went back to week 1 of last year and I just lined up Kellen Moore versus Vic Fangio to get a feel for what we're going to get. I can analyze both guys at the same time. So it's kind of helpful in that way. But here we go. First down. So to give you the circumstances of this, right? Essentially what happened was Miami was, or not Miami, but Miami was driving the ball. And then basically there was a fumble. Bad exchange from the center. There's a fumble. Now Miami has, the Chargers deep inside their own 10-yard line. Like they were about to score, so they got them pretty deep inside there. And we'll watch kind of from there how he lines it. And I'll give you some of the information, some of the notes I have on this situation here. So let me add it to the stage. Penny front, 0 technique, not offensive tackle, 0 technique. Down here in the middle, guys, that's Raekwon Williams. If you look to your right, the guy that's kind of playing, kind of in that 4 kind of role. And then if you look all the way over to your opposite side, that was Zeeler. So basically what you got here on first down, guys, is a gap run block. Okay, so you can see lines going one way. The pulling guard goes the opposite direction. It's a gap scheme run. But what you have here is Zach Zeeler is playing a 4 technique in this one, and Christian Wilkins is playing like a 3 technique on this screen. So one of the notes I was bringing up here, guys, is that I'm really not a huge fan of Fangio's system when it comes to run defense. I don't think that I don't think his approach to run defense always lines up to ranking very highly in terms of it, right? I mean, he's had a couple of years to where I think the talent level kind of carried him. And I think that's got to be our hope here in Philadelphia, is that we got dudes that are actually fairly good run defenders. But I'm also a little nervous about like kind of mesh this thing all together from a run defense perspective, because a lot of the goal, a lot of what he wants to do from a run defense perspective, guys, is he wants to actually essentially spill the run outside, right? He wants to clog up the middle, spill the run outside. So that's a big part of it. Let me go back and let you guys see that again. So let me see if I can't run this one through. So penny front, you can see Christian Wilkins is the 3 technique. Christian Wilkins is over to the right of your screen, outside of the guard. Zeeler is that 4 technique. So he's like heads up over the tackle, essentially. It's a 4 technique. Inside shoulder of the tackle is a 4-eye. Outside shoulder of the tackle is a 5 technique. All right, you can see the gap scheme there where the line blocks down the center. You can see the left guard, the center. Everyone starts blocking right, but then the right guard pulls left. That's a gap scheme, guys. This is a pretty big, opening run for having an opponent pinned down there to give them 5 yards off the goal line. not the best thing. Like I said, guys, I'm not in love with Fangio's defenses versus the run. I think it's highly predicated upon the talent around him, if I'm going to be honest. All right, guys. So what I want to do is I have a lot of these lined up for you guys to talk about. But the first thing I want to do is I want to talk in general about the techniques that were played here. When they're in a penny front, what you're going to get here is Zach Zeeler is going to play kind of the Milton Williams role, guys. And if you look at the body type, he's taller. He's taller than Milton is. He's 6'5". He's only 288 pounds. He's got a 33.88-inch arm reach. Okay, a little longer in terms of 33.75-inch arm reach. My bad, guys. A little longer in the arm reach than Milton Williams. A little taller than Milton Williams. 80.375-inch wingspan. But he's a lighter guy, right? He's a guy that you kind of can see playing on a 30 front is kind of that defensive end role, right? The hand in the dirt guy. Makes sense there. Their nose tackle is Raekwon Davis, who's a 6'6". Jordan Davis also really big, tall nose, but he's lighter than Jordan. He's 311 pounds, 33.88-inch arm reach, 85.25-inch wingspan. Big, rangy, wingy kind of guy there, right? And then Christian Wilkins kind of plays what used to be our Fletcher Cox role, which I think is now going to be the Jalen Carter role, which is going to be more that left defensive tackle spot. He's 6'3", 311 pounds, very similar to essentially what Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox are right around the same range. He's got 32.5-inch arm range. I will say that Jalen Carter's a little longer in the limbs, 78.875-inch wingspan. And I think the important thing to know here is the snap count, guys. So I showed you them in a penny front. The first thing you should probably want to ask your Gators about the penny fronts is you said that they don't run penny fronts, like Fangio doesn't run penny fronts as much as some of his predecessors do. And I do think that sometimes you can make an argument around the depth that he has along the line and the talent level to why that may or may not occur. But I will say, if you look here, you got 498 snaps, roughly 45% of his snaps from Raekwon Davis. I went ahead and just kind of was like looking over the Eagles snap counts, and I just wanted to see like where we ranked there. You got over 500 snaps from Jordan Davis last year. So you got pretty close to the same kind of snap count there with the nose tackles. All right, Zach Zeeler, who's kind of that Milton Williams role, right? He played over 850 snaps, 856 to be technical, 77 and roughly like 0.5% of their snaps. So I wanted to see what Milton played last year just to see what's going to happen here. Milton Williams only played about 400 snaps on the season last year, okay? We're talking about probably an uptick. Milton Williams is going to have to play a lot more, in my opinion, to kind of stick around within the system and the scheme for what they want to do. So I'm going to go right to Milton's snap count here. So I'm sorry, Milton almost played 500 snaps, to be fair, 494. But we're looking at 494, almost 500 snaps compared to Zach Zeeler playing essentially 856. That is a significant uptick, okay? So I think the first question we're going to have to ask ourselves, okay, is the rotation along the defensive line. And if you look at Vic Fangio, how much of rotation are you going to have on the interior defensive line? Because his two main backups really only played about 200 snaps. All right? So after that, guys, essentially the next guy up is Christian Wilkins. He played roughly 890-some snaps for them, 81% of their snaps. We look at Jalen Carter, who would kind of be taking that role. Or, you could make the argument instead of looking at Jalen Carter, even though that's going to be the guy that's going to have to uptick guys. You can make the claim that really in that role last year was a split between Fletch, who played 684, and then Jalen Carter played 563. Fletch, in his previous years, has played pretty close to that snap count, those 800 snaps. So I think Jalen Carter was always going to work up to that total. But that's the thing, is that we do have to figure out how you're going to work up to these totals. You have two players playing over 800 snaps on the interior defensive line, Zeeler and Wilkins for the Dolphins last year, right? Their nose tackle played roughly around the same amount of snaps that our nose tackle played. Our nose tackle, Jordan, Davis played a little bit more. You could make the argument that, well, maybe Jordan Davis is going to factor in a little bit more than Raekwon Davis did into playing like some of the 2-eye technique, 3 technique, even 4 or 5 technique. Like they can move him around the line a little bit more than they could do with Raekwon. I get that, but we don't know until it happens on the field, right? So then you got to look at, well, who else is on the roster for the Eagles? Like, what are the battles behind the top 3 guys? We got Marlon Tuipulotu, who's coming back for an injury, but he's a guy who has some experience. He's played in the league at 200 snaps before. He's 6'2", 307 pounds, 33-inch arm reach, 10-inch hands, 81-inch wingspan. I think the important thing about Marlon Tuipulotu, and whether we project him or not, guys, this is not a projection to make. There's no way to know that yet. But the one thing to know about him is that he has experience playing nose tackle, backing up the nose tackle spot. he's also one of the few guys on this roster with extensive experience playing the left defensive tackle spot as a backup. So backing up Jalen Carter, if you will. Although I will say Ajamo he didn't play that much last year, but he did play more snaps on the left than the right side, which was a little, I think he fits more of the Milton Williams role than he does the Jalen Carter role, but be interesting to see how Vic Fangio sees it, to be quite honest. Moro Jamo's the next guy up, guys. 6'3", 292, 34.5-inch arm reach. He's got the big, long arm reach. 10-inch plus hands, 83.375-inch wingspan. This is a guy that had really good college film in terms of stopping the run down there at Texas. That was the one thing I took notice of when I said that this could be the steal of the draft last year. That's one thing I noticed about Ajamo is he's a tremendous run defender. Gabe Hall, undrafted free agent. I'm still doing work on him, guys, but taller guy. 6'6", 290-ish, 34.5-inch arm reach. Smaller hands than you would suspect for a dude his size, but 9.5-inch hands. 83.625-inch wingspan. Big, tall, rangy kind of guy, right? A little lighter. I don't know how they see him. I see him more as a 5 technique, 4-eye, 5 kind of technique. It'd be interesting to see if they see him more as a 3. They're going to play him in that Jalen Carter backup kind of role. Would he get some snaps there? PJ Mustafer's got a little bit of time playing in Denver. He's a backup nose tackle, guys. He's 6'4", 320, 32.75-inch arm reach, 79, just short of basically 80-inch wingspan. And then Tomer Booker the fourth is kind of a 3 technique that's got, he's kind of like that Marlon Tuipulotu type role. 6'3", 301, 33.25-inch arm reach, 10+ inch hands, 79.875-inch wingspan. So right around 80 inches in the wingspan. The first thing we have to look at here, guys, is like the rotation. How deep are they going to go in the rotation? Like, is this going to be a 4-man rotation on the interior defensive line? Is it going to be a 3-man rotation with a subtlety to the fourth guy getting maybe a couple hundred snaps and that's it? That's the hard part, guys. That's the hard part, is figuring out how they're going to play this with Vic Fangio in terms of snap count here. Because I think that's kind of the one thing I don't have a definitive answer for you for, because we just don't know until we're in season. But I'm kind of expecting Milton Williams and Jalen Carter's playing time to really uptick. Either that or Jordan Davis is going to uptick. Like, Jordan Davis is going to be factoring a lot more, kind of playing along as like a 2-eye into a 3 technique more than what we've seen previously from him. Somebody's upticking tremendously. There's no doubt about it, just from the way that we see Fangio plays his guys. All right, I want to show you some 4.25 from the video and like what I saw here. So let me go to my video files, guys. I got everything kind of lined up here in terms of like all the different, things here. So this is a 4.25 alignment here. So these are these mixed fronts. 4.25 is the mixed front. The 2-eye is Christian Wilkins. The 3 technique is Zach Zeeler. Of course, they're pulling their nose tackle off the ball here. All right, you can see their overhangs here. All right, so overhangs, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb is playing more of the Josh Sweat role. Jalen Phillips is playing more of what we were used to with Haason Reddick, guys. All right. The use of Van Ginkel off ball and dropping into coverage is what stood out to me about this snap. That was interesting to see Van Ginkel. He was on the right-hand side, guys. He picked up the running back, okay? I'm curious of the possibilities of playing big nickel with DeJean in that role, or linebackers Trotter Jr. or Zach Bond, the edge linebacker. Like, how do you, Zach Bond being kind of the Van Ginkel type dude, or Trotter Jr. if they use like a more of a coverage linebacker. I'm interested to see when you're playing those fronts, how do you do that? And I just wanted to take a sneak peek at like what they were doing at linebacker. And what I saw was they played David Long Jr. quite a bit. He played 823 snaps, roughly 74.5% of their snaps. Jerome Baker played about 714 snaps, or roughly 65% of their snaps. But then you got Van Ginkel, who played off ball and on ball. So this is a tough evaluation because it's not true to just being off ball. 726 or 66% of their snaps. And then you got Duke Riley, who played 392 snaps, just short of 400, which is 35%. They weren't hesitant to put a third linebacker in to rotation. That's something that's interesting to me because we haven't seen that recently, right? We outside of injury, Nicholas Morrow was not going to crack the lineup unless there was injury, to be quite honest, right? It wasn't until he cracked the lineup and then Nakobe came back healthy. Then they started cycling that 3 linebacker rotation between Nicholas Morrow, Nakobe Dean, and then Zach Cunningham. So I'm curious if they step in here with, White, Nakobe, Trot Jr., Zach Bond. If you see a little bit of rotation here, Orion Burks, like I'm curious there, man. I'm really, really curious how they do that in terms of the linebacker. We don't have a lot of data to pull from here. Nakobe's been injured. Devin White's never played in our system before, so can't really pull any kind of historical data there to back anything up there. Orion Burks is just coming over. Zach Baum was playing with New Orleans, which is different. Not a lot to pull from here. Trot Jr. is rookie, so there's no way of really doing those comparisons like I just did for you on the interior defensive line. But it's something to keep track of here. This is something that stood out to me about this is that, oh, wow, like where I was a little shocked that there wasn't much of a rotation along the interior defensive line. There's a pretty big rotation in terms of the third linebacker. Like they definitely got guys involved. The other thing I saw here in terms of your edge, I know you guys are like, yo, Steve, you kind of skipped over the edges. Bradley Chubb played 836 snaps. Jalen Phillips got hurt. So that's why I didn't really talk too much about the edges. I don't know if he would have played Jalen Phillips at the same rate. So I don't know how much of a rotation to expect. When I was looking at the situation from the Eagles' perspective and what I was expecting them to do, I think you have to define where you're going to align guys in terms of the defensive line. It's a little odd because I thought Nakobe Dean would have, or not Nakobe Dean, I'm sorry, guys. I thought that when you looked over the rotation we had set forth from the Eagles and like just kind of the way they were playing these guys and what I thought would be, kind of coming down the pipeline in terms of how we were going to align everybody, I definitely thought that we were going to see Nolan Smith play a little bit more towards the Haason Reddick side of the ball. But in reality, while he did play a little bit towards the Sam side, he was mostly kind of coming off the bench and backing up Joshua Sweat's side, kind of that weak side of things. And then they were using Brandon Graham a little more than I thought as kind of a Sam role, which I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they were doing that, guys. I can't tell you. So that's the first thing I'm looking at here is like, you look at the rotation they have, right? So I'm projecting it's going to be Bryce Huff as the Sam. And then your weak side guy is going to be probably Josh Sweat. And then I think you're going to have Nolan Smith and Brandon Graham as the second line. And then I think Zach Bond's he's going to work into a rotation with the young kid, Jalix Hunt, a little bit. Zach Bond, I expect to get more snaps than Jalix Hunt. If you go back and look at Josh Sweat's rookie year, he got less than 100 snaps. I kind of anticipate something similar with Jalix Hunt. I'd be shocked if he got over 200, just given the nature of where he was picked, the development that has to occur, that kind of thing. So, like, when I look at this, I got to get a feel for how Fangio, if he's going to roll with the way they did things previously, or is he going to move, the young kid Nolan Smith over to back up Bryce Huff? Is, Brandon Graham going to come off the weak side? I personally would favor Brandon Graham playing off the weak side with Josh Sweat because you want your run defenders there. When you're on the backside or you're playing weak side, sometimes you're out there on an island by yourself in containment. There's no spill guys, right? You don't have a nickel. You don't have that same depth normally played from the strong safety to spill to, right? It's not the same. So, like, there are times where you're really on an island out there on that weak side. So I would prefer the Josh Sweats and the Brandon Grahams who are really good run defenders out there, then have these guys like Nolan Smith, who, to his credit in college, is a better run defender than most people understand. But he's not Brandon Graham. He's not Josh Sweat in that ability. I would rather him out there with Bryce Huff side where you got spill defenders, right? To where the role for the run defense is a little easier there. Now you can make the case that, Steve, as good as Josh Sweat has been previously at run defense, last year Josh Sweat got in trouble for freelancing. And he got in a little trouble for that. So we'll see. I mean, I still think Josh Sweat's a good guy, man. I think you got to uptick here. I think you have to uptick with your edge players. Bryce Huff is going to have to go from playing, 300, 400, 500 snaps to probably playing about 800, 800. That's going to be an uptick. I can't say what to expect there. What I will say about him, and I want to show you guys this screen because I do think this is important to show and how he may have made some of the moves he made. Okay, so I want to share screen again. So I had to bring down what I was sharing earlier. No, not video files, Steve. Sorry, guys. I want to share my screen, and I want to go to my pass rush grades. All right, guys, so hopefully you can see this. If you filter by win percentage, okay, just straight up win percentage underneath pressure rate, Luke had the third highest win percentage in the league last year. Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, Bryce Huff. All right. If I filter down here all the way to 48, then I get Haason Reddick, okay? The old man, I know we like to pick on him, but look at where Brandon Graham is, right? 19.5%, 10th overall. I think you got to keep snaps off of Brandon Graham to keep him that effective, to be fair, right? You do need to keep snaps off of him, but you can see Jalen Carter, 21st overall, 17. I think you got to find that triad, that trio of edge players or just pass rushers, whether it's interior, whether it's on the outside, no matter how they do it, they got to find that trio of guys that can play like that. And that's going to be really important, I think, on the year, to be quite honest, is how they do that. Now I want to go to what they call the true pass sets and go to the win rate. And you can see here, he does drop down a little bit. You can see Brandon Graham comes up 29.6. When you look at it here, you got Micah Parsons as third, and then you got Bryce Huff over here in seventh with 29.1. Still pretty good, right? Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff right beside each other in these true pass sets. You can see Andrew Von Ginkel, who we had last year, 27.2 with Miami. We're going to see if Zach Bond can produce that kind of magic, because I think he's another guy to kind of watch your eye on. Jalen Carter is 15th when you look at true pass sets. So, I mean, reason to be optimistic, reason to be skeptical too. I think it's both ways, guys. I think there's reasons to be optimistic. I think there's definitely reasons to be skeptical as well. Both ways. I think Bryce Huff, the underlying analytics are quite good on his play. He hasn't played this many snaps, though. He hasn't been the guy that he's got to be dependent upon. Like, Bryce Huff has got to be the dude here in Philly. That's a different role. I don't know how that's going to turn out, guys. I mean, it's a projection. But I do think there were some reasons why Howie was trying to maneuver the way he did. It just, the name hurts us, right? Because it's a Philly, guy that's from Camden, guy who loved Philly, played, at Temple. Like, the name hurts a little bit, no doubt about it. But I do think that they got to find some answers in terms of like identifying three dudes who can get you solid pressure. Brandon Graham's probably on his last season here with the Eagles. Probably last year he's going to play. Nolan Smith has got to step up. Nolan Smith has got to be a player. Josh Sweat has got to be better than when he was last year. Josh Sweat's always around the ball, but he's got to win some of those true pass sets. We need him to win on those true pass sets. He needs to get back up into that above 15% markers in those true pass sets and kind of be there. So, I mean, that's going to be vital with what they do here. All right, guys, I want to keep going because there was an interesting third down rep I saw here that as soon as I saw it, I was like, boy, you're kind of leaving a lot open here, Vic. But here, I'm going to show you what he did here from a third down perspective. This is, once again, it's going to be like a mixed front. It's kind of like a 4-2-5. I'm going to show you how I view a 4-2-5 versus a 3-3-5 in a minute, guys. But mixed front, the 4-eye is Christian Wilkins. Okay, see him inside shoulder of the tackle. And then you got a 3 technique in Zealer on the left-hand side. Your overhangs are Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Look at the middle of this field, though, guys. Look at the middle, this whole middle area, because where the linebackers are, how they have the linebackers stacked. It's kind of like 2 triangles almost. What I found interesting is Van Ginkel has flip sides, and I was expecting there to be like a fire zone blitz. So Van Ginkel's to like the left side here. He's not on the right side. This time he's on the left side. Look at the middle of the defense. It is wide open. Just a lot of real estate, a lot of room to run. No, that point was wrong about Van Ginkel, by the way. He's on the right side. Sealer does a good job beating his guy, but you got to make the tackle, man. You cannot miss on the quarterback here if you're Zealer, because this is just an easy first down. This is an easy step up and run situation if you miss the tackle. Got the pressure, did everything right except for bring the guy down. Because if you don't bring him down, now you're looking at first down again. That was just a little too easy. That's kind of, it's not the same as like Jim Schwartz in his NASCAR package, but it's reminiscent of it, right? You're trying to get a speed rush there. You got yourself a 4-eye, you got yourself a 5 technique, or I'm sorry, a 3 technique. That 4-eye is there for run support, to be honest, towards the top side, your strong side of formation. The 3 technique is there to get the pass rush like he got free. It did work. He did get freed up there. I was expecting when I saw that to there be some kind of twist stunt, some kind of use of fire zone, like them bringing linebackers on that one. They didn't bring them there, but there's a lot of film where they use Van Ginkel in that role where he's coming hot on that. Right there, he's picking up the running back, to be honest. It's interesting to see the way that, Fangio kind of plays some of these fronts. It's not drastically different from what we've played previously. There's not a ton of differences, to be quite honest, guys. One of the other ones I wanted to show you guys real quick. So let me remove this from the studio. There was a really good back and forth here. So I'm going to go to video file. So this one's really, this is an excellent one to watch just because this is going to give you a perspective of Vic Fangio, and I'm going to show you Kellen Moore perspective. So this is 3-3-5 in alignment. It's an empty back set. This is clearly air raid. So look out here, empty back set. You get what I'm saying, guys? It's clearly air raid, okay? They're in a 3-3-5, and I'm explaining it when I give you the other angle. I want to give you guys a feel for what's happening here. Look to the top of your screen, guys. Okay. Now I want you to watch these two receivers play off of each other. Top of your screen, inside stack receiver. Watch how Moore isolates Keenan Allen on David Long Jr., the linebacker. Watch the outside wide receiver, guys. The outside wide receiver is going to cross the face of the safety. He's going to drag the corner with him, which isolates Keenan Allen underneath of him on like a wheel route on David Long Jr. That's a yard of separation easily. He's now one-on-one with the linebacker, and he has a yard of separation already. This was creative by Vic, but this is also pretty dang creative by Kellen Moore from Fangio's perspective. He has 3 down linemen, the 5 tackle to the bottom of your screen, okay? That's Christian Wilkins, the overhang to your left of your screen. All right, the real question is, where is Jalen Phillips? And I'll show you. Outside, lined up, playing coverage. That's where he is. Creativity on both sides, but Kellen's play call to isolate the linebacker was spot on. He was right on the money with that, guys. Like that was a really, really good play call and a decision by him to try to isolate his guy. He looked at that quarters coverage. He saw that look, they got an edge linebacker type player out there on one side, on the strength side, okay? And then they've got, a linebacker kind of peeling off off that triangle down there. So he knew if he could cross the face of the safety with that top receiver and he could sell through a wheel route, he could sell the underneath coverage. He's probably going to be able to cut that up on a wheel route and get that isolation there. Keenan Allen, a very gifted route runner, guys, very savvy guy, sold that wheel route really well. It's tough, right? Because, normally we're seeing wheel routes, we're expecting them coming out of the backfield. This was a very interesting concept from the receiver and a delayed kind of release there to kind of free himself up and get himself that one-on-one isolation play there. I mean, that's pretty cool, man. Like that's something I'd like to see a little bit more creativity with, especially when you got guys like, I'll tell you who I think would be really interesting in that role is Devontae Smith, right? I don't think you need to do a lot of those gimmicky stuff for A.J. Brown. He's just going to out-physical you. You're not taking that dude down that way. However, using those things to kind of get a guy like Devontae Smith in space and isolate it, you're looking at some big-time plays, guys. Like that's what I want to see offensively. I know we're not talking about offense today, but I just saw that back and forth between our current D coordinator and our current offensive coordinator during week 1 of last year. And I was like, let me pull this up for everybody to see because this was a pretty cool kind of little X's and O moment here between these two. I think the bigger point to get here is the personnel the Eagles may use in that situation. I think it helps when you have a guy that's as versatile as a Cooper DeJean, right? Cooper DeJean could be able to come in there and play the role, can kind of play this hybrid nature thing. I think that helps you out, right? I don't know that I want to see any of our particular edges out there doing that, guys. I don't think that's our game. I don't think that we have a Jalen Phillips that should be playing in space like that. I like, Bryce Huff. I think Bryce Huff is definitely athletically gifted. I'd prefer for him not to be outside it's one thing to do creepers where he's creeping out and covering, right? It's another thing to actually have to isolate him outside like that. I think you're setting yourself up there. I wouldn't do that too much, to be honest. So, I mean, yeah, this is it's interesting, guys. It's just some of the things I was noticing from the film on these. All right, let's get into some questions, guys. Let's talk a little bit and then kind of talk about the role. Yeah, I agree with that, Dank, that maybe Hunt or Bond kind of role. Yeah, I think that's not too ridiculous that they might use somebody like that in a situation similar to that. Sorry, guys. Let me scroll way up to the top. What's up, Cameron? How you doing, buddy? How's it going, Gabe? How's the family doing? Fight Eagles fight. What's up, William? Everyone's doing well, man. Can't complain. Jonathan said, Haason was great, but this feels like more a change in philosophy than an issue about a player. How he was held on too long in the past, Alshon, and how he tends to adjust his mistakes over time. I don't think that's the same mistake as Alshon, though, Jonathan. I don't know those are the same equivalencies. What's up, Carlos? How you doing, buddy? Hello, my man. We are going to too soon talk about the new coaching staff. Yeah. It's just an interesting way of being able to take both of these guys, Proud Infidel, and look at them. If Ringo played his entire college career in Toledo, he'd arguably be the greatest college prospect ever. Mitchell is overrated. We're going to see on Sundays, brother. That's a stupid take in my opinion, man, but good luck with it. I don't think we made a mistake on Haason. I mean, only way we'll really find out is during the games. Let's teach these kids the history of Eagles ball, blue collar, F Dulles, and San Francisco Whiners. Love your channel. Appreciate that, bro. Thank you, guys. What up, 2020? How you doing, man? Gates, you mentioned the Eagles looked to move up higher than 40 in the draft, but couldn't get a deal. Who was the target? I don't know, 2020. I know that they talked about them. They were trying to make deals all the way up, and they couldn't get up prior to 40. I'm going to assume that it was probably the same guy they got at 40, to be quite honest, 2020, but I don't know. I'm not in the room, so I can't say definitively. This year is going to be a hoot. There are so many options we can do player-wise. God bless Howie. You got to give him credit. Yeah, he can construct a roster, no doubt about it. Proud infidel. They wanted to move to 38 because they thought the Rams would take DeJean at 39. On Reddick, it depends if Huff can hold up and play 80% of the snaps or whatever. Reddick played and could be productive. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, 2020. It's going to be, not only can he play to that, I think that is one side of it, right? Is like, can you make it to that? He's a little bigger than Reddick, to be honest, though. I mean, he's got a little bit more size to him than Reddick does. But yes, you're right. Can you play to 80%, 75, 80% of the snaps? And can you be productive? Not only just healthy, but can you keep your production the same as you uptick in that play rate, right? I mean, that's the other side of this, is like the side we don't know about Bryce Huff is like, we know that he's really good in a kind of rotational role, but now he's kind of stepping into the role of being the guy. He's the man. Like he's got to really produce for us. This might be a special season. I'm seeing the budding of the flowers, seeing the roots take place, Stank. I'm sure Howie had his reasons, but Edge worries me now. I don't believe in Nolan Smith. It's not that I do or don't believe in Nolan Smith. I mean, there's just much to be learned. I mean, we don't know yet. He's, we haven't had the opportunity to see him play at a certain rate, a certain volume. I don't think he's going to be the starter, Davey, this year. I still think he's going to be a rotational piece. I still think he's going to be part of that second core. I expect to see his snaps to probably creep up towards 400. I think he's got to be in that 300 to 400 range at least, because next year you have a big decision there. You got to know if he's a guy that can be depended upon to then elevate up to a starting role, and you can't do that, in my opinion, on less than 200 snaps. I think I think that's a major risk if you do that. This feels so right. Remember last time we drafted 2 corners? Remember the pickle juice game? Shut down corners. I envision Bond was second unit at Sam and a 30 front, and BG was third unit, and BG and a defensive tackle on third downs or obvious passing downs and a 40 front. Yeah, how they play everybody is going to be interesting 2020. And I don't have a definitive answer yet, because like I'm looking over Miami's film. I'm starting to dig in a little bit to when he was there in Denver. I need to try to make time over the summer to look at even Chicago's film. You're never going to have an apples for apples in the comparison. That's the issue. You know what I'm saying? 2020, like it's never going to be apples to apples because the personnel is different. But there are some similarities in a personnel perspective with what they were doing in Miami. One of the things I'll say real quick, and like, I put that tweet out, and I did that in the last video, guys, where I talked about, during the draft process, I talked about what I thought they were looking for, which was a guy over 6'3", a guy that's going to be 250 plus, and someone who's going to have 33 inches or longer in the arm reach and close to 80 inches in the wingspan. That's what they're looking for, I thought, as a Vic Fangio edge player. I named the guy that was eventually drafted. I didn't know they were going to draft him. It's just I'm using what I can see from judging everything around me, then I can see what players fit that model. What I will say is you go take a look at it. Bradley Chubb, 6'4", 269, 34 inches in the arm reach, 79-inch wingspan, right? Jalen Phillips, 6'5", 260, 33 and a quarter inch in the arm reach, 80.75 inches in the wingspan. So 3/4 basically, 80 inches and 3/4. Like you can see that, you look at Jalex Hunt, right? 6'4", he's got 34-inch arm reach, and he's 80 some inches in the wingspan. Like it's not hard to put together what they were looking for. I think that, the last video, the comp I gave, and it's not that I think they're the same player, guys, but they're the same body frame types and athletic testing type, was Dallas Turner. The way that everyone's saying, look, Dallas Turner's a little light right now. He's a specific fit for specific schemes. But he's got the frame to grow into. It's not like you're looking at a guy that's going to be 245 to 248 for the rest of his career. It's a guy that can get up to 255, 260-ish. I think the same thing is true with Jalix Hunt. This is a guy that, was a late bloomer, was not a very tall guy, kind of started growing into himself. Already at the combine, came in at 6'4", 252, I think is what he weighed in at. It's a guy that I don't think it's unreasonable to see him get, think of what has, going back to it, but think of what exactly Josh Sweat weighed in at the combine. Very similar body style. Got up to about 260, 265 in the NFL. Josh took time to develop. And that's going to be the tough part with that decision on the edge. Like, I don't know that the entire fan base is going to be pacified if he turns into a really good player a couple of years down the road. But I think that's what they're banking on, right? I think this was the Josh Sweat roll of the dice. Dad said it's a huge gamble on God. Don't worry, we will take Huff in rotation. Remember how he's never done ever? You think he's still going to add Proud Infidel? I was wondering why you are showing the Chargers against Miami. Yeah, it's to give you perspective of both coordinators. Maybe Hunt or Bond in that role. Yeah, Dank, I think I was talking about that earlier. But yeah, I agree that makes sense to me. That you could use you could play some big nickel and put a Cooper DeJean out there, right? With a nickel corner, or with another linebacker playing the weak side of the field. You could definitely use an edge. If you're going to use an edge, use a Zach Bond type, a guy that's got a little bit more movement skill, a little bit more ability to do that. I still don't think he's the most fluid guy, but you know what I mean? I definitely would probably take Zach Bond out there in isolation moving like that in the flats, over Huff or anyone like that. Although I will say, like, Nolan Smith I don't think is a complete misfit there either in that role. If you're looking at Zach Bond, Nolan Smith type, those dudes, like, I don't want to see Josh Sweat out there doing that. Like Josh Sweat, 2 years ago, maybe not now. Like that. Yeah, that's not what I want to see. That would be bad. My man, what is your thoughts on the new coaching staff's plans? Got to see them in action, Proud Infidel. I mean, I want to see what they do offensively to jumpstart things. And like with Vic Fangio, I'm not overly concerned about where things are going to rank. Just get us off the field on third down. That's the rank I care about. Prevent touchdowns from going up on the board and get us off the field on third down. Allow us the ability to take double-digit leads and just absolutely get physical like we did in 22 against teams. That's what I want to see. What's good, Daz? Still would love to see us go out and get a guy like JOK and fortify this defense. You're talking about someone at that second level, linebacker. Yeah, JOK is a guy that could probably pretty much play that tweener role too, like Zach Bond, to be honest. He can, they used to, people forget, but like even the year that we had Gannon here, they used Kaiser White like that too. They would play Kaiser White as an overhang on occasions. Hey, Coach, with Vic's defense, how much 34 will we see compared to 4-3 or 52? Good to see you, Coach. Blessing to you and the family. Hey, what's up, Drew? Thank you. I appreciate that, buddy. I think you're going to see a lot of mixed fronts. And I think it's going to be on the way that they're mixed fronts. So they're not truly a 40 front. They're not truly 30 fronts. They're mixed. For me, when you see them playing like a 2-eye with like a 3 technique or 4-eye, and you got 2 overhangs, it probably depends on the gap integrity they're playing and whether or not you're going to consider those overhangs, how you're going to look at that to be a 30 front or a 40 front. I would consider that more of a 40 front. But then when you go 3 down linemen and they're gap and a half or 2 gapping with 1 overhang off the edge, like we showed on that one play where they were getting a little cute with things, that's a 3-3-5 to me. That's a nickel-based 30 stuff to me right there. Roland said, just joined. Eagles front office seems to do well identifying players before they blow up. Before Reddick, we signed Hargrave and blew up and signed massive contract with Niners. Huff is next in line. Hopefully we can hold on to Huff a little longer. He's still pretty young. Hopefully we get him for more than 3 or 4 years. Can Cooper DeJean be as good as Harrison Smith? I don't know, Richie. That's a heck of a comp, man. I don't want to throw shade at Harrison Smith, man. I think he deserves the flowers because he's a good player. But I think the Eagles may potentially. It depends on how they view him. That's the thing, Richie. Is like, do they see him as like this hybrid nickel safety, kind of thing just for the moment? He's going to eventually bounce outside. I don't know, man. Like until they line these guys up, I know today he said he was everywhere, that they aligned him everywhere, but it's so tough to say that, Richie. Like I got to know the long-term projections of him. Can he be a force player from the safety role like Harrison? He plays with that kind of physicality. I just don't know if he's as good. You know what I mean? Like Richie, he's got to show that at the NFL level before I say he's as good as Harrison Smith. How do you feel about our linebacking core? What's up, Haason? Better than last year. Still don't think it's 100%. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that I would sleep on exactly what they have here. I think Orion Burks, I think Trot Jr., I think Nakobe Dean, I think Devin White, together, that group together, it's decent. Ben Van Sumer, and if he makes the roster, I think he might be a guy they kind of carry on the practice squad. But we'll see. I mean, he's got time to make the roster. I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one, Haason. I don't think that it's as good as it needs to be for the long-term projection, but I think we're in a little better of a situation than we were in last year. Dank says, I don't think it's a matter of if we believe in any player. They just have to show up. Yeah, exactly, Dank. Yeah. Please, I hope this year we have more than 10 plays on offense. You don't like to shorten playbook, sir? Fitness Warrior says, Daz, why didn't you tell me about Gate? This man is awesome, and he has a brilliant football mind. Appreciate that, Fitness Warrior. Is it a chance that Nolan Smith was able to hide his flaws playing with five-star athletes at Georgia? I mean, yeah, to an extent, Richie. I mean, of course, that could be a potential possibility. I'm not ready. I'm not going to write him off yet, Richie. Like, I mean, he's got to get an opportunity to really uptick his playing time to see what he can be. I can tell you he's got to be better than 5.5% win percent. Even like I didn't look at his true pass sets, but just looking at his overall pressure rate at 5.5%, it's got to get into double digits, man. It's not acceptable for someone as twitchy as him to be that low on the scale. Like he's got to be better than that. But we'll see, man. We'll see. What's up, Glizzy? He said, what's up, Gate? Wide receivers do you think make the roster? Do you think either of the camp guys make it, like Ross or Jakeem Grant? That's tough, man. I think we got a pretty stacked receiving core. I'm curious what they're going to do because you got a guy who's a pretty good punt returner. But if you got other dudes that can do punt return and kick return at the same time, and they're in reserve roles, it's tough, man. That's a tough one. Let me work through in my head exactly who's on the roster and like how we would do this. Because I mean, right off the bat, I would say that we know there's two locks. We got AJ, we got Devontae. Those two are locks. I don't think anyone else on the roster is necessarily a lock. But I will say that I will project that Paris Campbell right now, unless he time to get beat out, guys. Don't take this as like locky man. He's going to be the guy. But I think Paris Campbell makes the most sense to me right now as kind of the slot, the opening day starter. I think if there's anything left in the tank with Devontae Parker, I think he's your 4. Still got to show that there's something in the tank. That's the thing. What's his name? Aeneas Smith. I think he's going to be your 5th because he's a 5th round pick. He's the guy that I think eventually probably take the slot over. And then you get into the 6th role. Like that's that open spot if they're going to carry 6. Like like I said, I don't think Parker is a lock on this roster, to be quite honest. I just don't. We got to see if the big kid can separate Wilson. 6'6", 6'7" 230 some pounds. I mean, he was a menace in the ACC, but this is the NFL. I got to see if he can separate. And if he can't separate, doesn't matter. Is he just got really good? Does he understand how to use his body to his advantage, basically? Alshon never was great at separating at any point in his career. That was never his calling card, but he just really understood how to position his body and just how to have strong hands to catch point. Can that young man develop into that kind of boundary type player, or is he going to be one of these long-term projects that they kind of put on the practice squad and start developing as a tight end body? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a mentality to playing tight end, guys. I don't think it's a given that every guy can do that just because they have size. Although they've done this before with a quarterback, the young man we signed from Buffalo. I think he played at the University of Buffalo as well. Because I think the Giants ended up picking him up after we cut him, but he was on the roster for a couple of years and he showed some ability, but he was a quarterback. So I don't know if, you look at Johnny Wilson and you think he could do that same thing. That's a good question. Like the young man, the Mormon, we got to look at that situation and do we think that he's a guy that can give you a lot of reps on special, like, is his special team use going to carry him on the roster? Like, that's Britton Covey's got to show that, like, he can be carried onto the roster by that production. And then you got all these other guys we brought in, Ross, big time speed guy. You got guys on the practice squad that I think are trying to vie for that 6th spot. If they keep 6 receivers, I think that's where it gets kind of interesting. Parker's a guy that I'm not sold completely being on the roster. I don't think there's much lost if you cut him, but I don't know either. Like, he's kind of a difficult one, guys, to be honest. What's up, Coach? People are getting the kid the Eagles picked up from the Saints will have a big role in this defense. Oh, yeah, you're talking about Zach Bond. Yeah, I don't know the extent to his role, Vincent, but I think that he can have an important role, even if it's not a role that lands him 500-600 snaps. It might be closer to 300 snaps or 400 snaps, but I still think that he could be a guy that in a rotational piece, a rotational player, it's a solid player for us. Yeah, he knows his stuff. Appreciate it, guys. Why are people so worried about Nolan Smith? He hasn't had enough snaps to determine if he'll be good or not. I think that is the worry, is the uncertainty, Roland. I think that's what they're worried about. Chancellor Smith becoming a predominant off-ball backer. If they don't get the production they envisioned at edge. Movement ability is there, mind design, but you got to have the eyes for the position, the anticipation, the ability to break down angles. I don't know if he has that. I mean, we wouldn't know that until he's on the field. I'd have to look into his background. I mean, maybe there's a chance he played that a little bit in like high school or something. So maybe there's some background to that, but like there is a second part of that, right? The underlying lateral movement ability and the fluidity. Yeah, he could do that in that perspective, but there's still that part of understanding angles, understanding the blocking scheme and where you have to fill, those things like that. Haason Reddick hit the wall or had his career years. It's only going to go down with the Jets resigning Josh Sweat. Was that smart? Well, you need to have people in rotation, Richie. I mean, I think it is. I don't know that Haason Reddick has hit his wall yet, Richie. I think we might be a little premature on that. I still think that young man's got 2 to 3 years of productivity in him. Thoughts on Trotter Jr.? I like him as a prospect, As. I mean, I'm not going to proclaim him that he's a starter yet, but I think people – I heard a couple analysts like doubt his ability to cover and play in space. And I'm like, that ain't what I saw on film. That's not what I saw from just my time watching ACC football and Clemson being one of our main rivals here at NC State. The dude plays – he's really good in coverage. I can say that. I mean, if you want to say that maybe he's a little tight-hipped when he did the testing and maybe that could be a problem at the NFL level where, everybody's an athlete, sure, I can understand that perspective in space, but I think he was a pretty damn good prospect, to be honest with you. I think he's a guy that could develop potentially into a starter. I definitely think he's got that kind of ability. Nolan Smith being traded for a 3rd pick. It happens. I don't know, man. I haven't heard anything about like that. I mean, I haven't heard anything that would indicate they were going to trade him. I think they probably want to see the results of this season before they started looking into those kind of, possibilities, to be honest, Richie. Sweat wasn't extended, restructured on this his last year. Yeah, that's true, guys. Nolan Smith needs to ball out this year. Yeah, I agree. Nolan Smith, all the young guys, all of them do. Nolan's got to be forceful. He's got to be an impact player, right? Past Nolan Smith, we need Bryce Huff to be that guy. He's got to be that dude, man. He's got to show us what he was showing in New York. He's got to be that kind of guy as a pass rusher. Jalen Carter's got to put together a full season of productivity. Jordan Davis, we know he can be a run stuffer. You got to give us something in the pass rush game. You know what I mean? Like we're not expecting double-digit sacks, but you gave us a couple sacks early on in the season. Can you give us a couple throughout the year? You know what I mean? Can we get 4 or 5 out of you? Because that would be 4 to 4.5, 5 sacks from him would be a tick in the right direction, especially if he's increasing his workload. Milton Williams, man, I thought Milton Williams was going to really take advantage of his opportunity last year, and I didn't love the fact that he didn't. Yeah, I still think there's talent there, JT. I do. I think Milton Williams has talent, but I think he's got to prove it, right? That was the other thing I kind of wrote down as I was looking at her interior defensive line, right? Milton Williams, 21. Jordan Davis, 22. Jalen Carter, 23. Tui Pelotu, I think he was 21 as well. Ajamo, 23. Gabe Hall, undrafted free agent this year. PJ Musafir was just a couple of years ago. He came into the league. I don't remember Thomas Booker, but I think he was roughly around that same 2021 time frame, somewhere in that area, 22, somewhere in that area. These are all young guys. This defense is pretty young on the interior defensive line. I mean, Milton Williams is probably our most established guy right now in terms of linked in the league and stuff. So we'll have to see, man. I mean, that is kind of a not talked about aspect of things, to be honest. Trot Jr. has a good shot at beating out Dean, especially if Dean gets hurt again. Yeah, Richie. I mean, if he gets hurt again, it's going to be a problem. Like, he's got to stay healthy on the field. I think, to be honest, I think Nakobe Dean is a really, really good run defender. I think that he made a few mistakes, in terms of the mechanics of how you play the position when you drop into zone and coverage. He let some guys cross his face, which is a no-no. You're supposed to defend that, that hash and push vertically. However, I will say that a lot of the stuff that Nakobe got blamed for in coverage last year was really the result of really soft coverage schematically. I don't think it was as much his fault as it was the scheme, to be quite honest. Health is the main thing with Nakobe. Like, I mean, not much we can do if he just keeps ending up on the sideline injured. I mean, he's got to prove he can be healthy. I like the young man. I think the young man can play. I think if you go back and you look at the linebackers that the Dolphins played last year, a lot of people were interested in Jerome Baker. A lot of guys were interested in David Long Jr. They're, depending on if you believe Nakobe's measurables, but, that measurable was one time in his life. We don't know if he plays around high 220s, low 230s. We don't know if he plays that weight, guys. I mean, he measured that once. It's hard to say that he continuously measures that. But, I mean, those guys were only in their 220s as well. I mean, over the course of time, Jerome Baker got up to the low 230s. But, I mean, similar. These are similarly built guys to, what we have here with Nakobe Dean, what we have here with Trot Jr. These are not like substantially larger guys than them. From what I know from Fangio's scheme, he's off man zone, depends on monsters on the D-line, and we don't have monsters. Are we likely to see Derek Carr type quarterbacks go 30 for 32 pass completions for 300 yards? I mean, I don't know. I don't know 2020. I mean, that's got to be determined in season. I'll say that I think the corner play is going to be a little better than that. I don't anticipate that, to be quite honest, 2020, because these guys can drive on the ball and play what's in front of them. They can get in and break up passes. This isn't a Steven Smith situation where he was just playing off coverage and not challenging the ball. Really, look, I'm not trying to throw shade at him, but, he's a really, really good low zone defender, can play the run. Steven Nelson, I called him Steve Smith. Sorry. Steven Nelson can play the run really well, but he didn't challenge enough from the receiver game. And that's the thing, is like, if you're going to play that Fangio style where you're going to be off coverage like that, you have to challenge. You have to shoot your hips and challenge. You have to see that as it's progressing. You need to really pay attention to the top of the receiver's route stem and know when they're breaking it off, and you got to be able to get back there. So I don't think it'll be to that extent, but we don't know until it's in season either, 2020. I would say the defensive line's a little better than people are giving it credit for. I think Jalen Carter is going to be that guy. I think Jalen Carter is going to be a force to reckon with. It's just a matter of, can we get 2 to 3 edge players to also contribute and be impact players? That's going to be the thing, right? Can Milton do anything? Like, that's going to be the thing in terms of what we get out of this team. These young guys have got to step up. I don't see a 5th round rookie beating out Dean. I don't think it'll be initial, Daz. I think they're talking about as the season goes on. Will Mitchell be penciled in as a starter? I'm getting tired of Eagles draft picks not starting from the get-go. I don't know, Richie. I mean, not my decision to make. You know what I mean, Richie? I mean, the expectation is that if he's not the starter at the beginning of the season, it won't take long for him to become the starter. I think that's kind of the expectation. But if they get rid of if Bradbury's let go following June 1st, I mean, I would assume that Quinyon Mitchell, unless he gets beat out by somebody else, is probably your other starter. I would think that would be a pretty safe bet. But it's just a matter of, are they going to actually release Bradbury? I mean, they could technically give him a June 1st designation and do it right now and give him an opportunity to sign with another team. But they might just say there's no point in that because teams are going to have that funds available till after June 1st anyway. So maybe they say, like, it's for his sake, that doesn't really do that much for him at this point. Truly, the only thing I'm afraid of is injuries. I'm just so happy we're getting younger. I love the Keegan draft pick, future starter over Steen, although I do like Steen too. See, man, it's got to be done on the field. It's hard to stack these dudes right now. With AJ, he can show him those techniques. Yeah, he's got AJ. He's got Devontae Smith. He's got some guys to work against that are pretty dang good. NFL announces the schedule around May 12th through 14th. Will you do a live primetime live stream? Maybe. I got to look and see what's going on in terms of scheduling. I got the baby here sometimes, so it's going to depend upon when their schedule release date is. But I mean, if I have time, I'll do it. The Eagles spent the 29th pick on him, and we see players picked after him starting in the NFL. Agreed. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to catch up real quick. I don't understand people saying he can't cover. He was graded as the best cover linebacker in college. Yeah, I don't know where we're coming up with that narrative either, Dank. I don't get why they were saying that either, but there's definitely a few people that kept putting that one out there into the atmosphere. Just needs time to develop. Calais Campbell would be a nice piece to add as well. He's as kind of a veteran interior defensive lineman. He's getting up there in age, though. But yeah, he was a monster in his day. Youngest guy on the team is Ringo at 21. Yeah, he's a very young guy. Nailed it. Yeah, thanks, Des. Ray said, previous coach did not appear to know how to dang, Ray, my bad. Strategically position his men versus specific teams. Ojomo and Rick's only 22. Yeah, we got a couple of guys that are pretty young. If Dean can stay on the field, he will prove his worth. That's my hunch too, Occam, but he's got to be on the field, man. It's hard. Like if he goes down again this year for a lengthy, I mean, off-ball linebackers are going to get injured. It's going to happen. But I'm talking about those 4-game durations. You know what I mean, Occam? That's where it gets to the point to where it's like, man, this is getting pretty tough to justify this at this point. Milton Williams and Smith had very good games against Tampa. June 1st cuts could be Bradbury and or Slay. Any other Eagles veterans that will shock us that end up being cut or released? I don't see why they would release Parker that early. I think you should give him a fighting chance in camp. I do think either corner could potentially be released. I do think they'll hang on to one of them, to be honest. Avonte Maddox, potentially, if they just feel really good about nickel. And they're just like, look, Maddox it's too much of a risk because he's either going to be a starter or off the team, and we just feel good enough behind him to move on. Maybe they turn back on that deal quickly. That could be one, but I don't think so. I think they're going to give Avonte a chance to compete just because I think they like him. I think they like him personally. So I think they're going to give him that chance to compete. But I mean, I could see an outside chance of that happening. I'm trying to think who else would be kind of like a big name that we didn't see coming that would get released. I can't think of anybody else. I mean, this team is really young, and you know what I mean? Like, fortunately, there's a lot of youth coming in the door now. Really like Milton Williams. I'd rather keep Slay. I see why Bradbury makes this roster 0. I see no way Bradbury makes this roster 0. He'll be the mentor role. You guys talking about Slay. I don't understand why we brought Maddox back. Can't stay healthy. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely had his run of injuries. Philly 416, that's true. But when he's on the field, the reason they brought him back is when he's on the field, he's one of the better nickels in the league. But you're right, he hasn't been healthy. And that's tough. We didn't know we were going to get DeJean and Mitchell. That's why. We still had Rodgers before the draft. Yeah, but we're still making a projection even on Rodgers, though, to be honest. I mean, I like Isaiah Rodgers, Philly 416. I'm in agreement with you that he's worth a look as a nickel corner, but he hasn't really played it in the league that much. He's been primarily an outside corner, field corner. But he does have all the movement ability. Wasn't a fan of DeJean because I prefer players who have a defined role instead of versatile label. Then again, I thought the same about CMC in the draft being touted as a wide receiver halfback, so that gives me hope. Yeah, I think it depends upon the coaching staff 2020. And obviously if we were dealing with young coaches again who maybe couldn't really foresee how to use them, you know what I mean? Like, then, yeah, I think we have a problem. But I do see guys like Van Ginkel and the way that they used him in Miami with Fangio. Like, I see some creativity the way he can use guys and mix and match them up a little bit. But I agree with you. I'd much rather have him in year 2 or year 3 locking down a permanent role, not playing a versatile label. I can understand doing it this season to get him on the field, but I'd like to see him kind of develop into that permanent role somewhere. Believe me, this kid is real. Slay won't get cut. Yeah, I don't think he will either, Daz, but I understand where he's going with it, though, too. DeJean is the real deal, in my opinion. He's smart as you know what, and can be a ball hawk. I really love the depth of this secondary now. Yeah, it's pretty deep now, Akam. I was asking the question last night when we were doing the live stream. Someone asked me about the secondary and like in terms of the the corners, nickel and outside corners, like who would be the 6 guys I would keep? And like we were going through the list, and I was like, man, like even Eli Ricks, man, like I mean, you're gonna have to fight to make this roster. Like this is a pretty deep crowd. Like Howie just said he wanted Q to learn everything he could from Slay. I don't think he's getting cut unless he's just absolutely terrible. Phillies win again, huh, Daz? Man, they're on a streak, man. They're definitely on a streak right now. They're playing really good. You think Tyler Hall could be the starter at nickel? He's an interesting guy, JT, because the underlying numbers aren't like he doesn't look like Avonte Maddox. He doesn't look like Isaiah Rodgers in terms of the athleticism, but he's savvy. He's a savvy dude, right? He hasn't been a full-time starter to my knowledge at the nickel spot in the league, but he graded out really highly last year, kind of in the role he played there with Las Vegas Raiders. I just want to call them Oakland guys. If I call them Oakland, just correct me because I guarantee I'm going to do it if we keep mentioning players from there. But yeah, I mean, I think we got to get him on the field and see how it looks, JT. I don't want to just write him off, but I mean, they brought him in here for a reason. They brought him in here to compete clearly. You mean DeJean? I hope he is the real deal. Nothing would make me happier. Maddox impacts the game when he plays, though. Bradbury was terrible last season. A lot of the team was, but I still hope he gets back to being a Pro Bowler status. Yeah, I like Bradbury, and I like the size profile of Bradbury playing, that position, playing out there on the boundary. Like, for you guys that know me and followed me in the draft, you guys know that I like to project those type of body styles, right? Emerson in Cleveland, I was really high on him. I really love the underlying athletic and the testing on Brents, who went to Indianapolis, Julius Brents. He hasn't done crap in the league yet, guys. I mean, trust me, this is just a gate fascination thing. The guy has not deserved any kind of label yet. Julius Brents hasn't, but just the athleticism of that guy mixed in, like, I love the fact that he ended up going with Steichen. And I just think that he's a guy that in the right system, the right scheme, playing, they might use him in the boundary, or they might use him in the field instead of the boundaries because he's fluid. He can move. But I do think that kind of athleticism with that kind of like physicality and that kind of like reach for a boundary corner, I think the dude could be pretty good. Sorry, guys. It's trying to click all over the place. Expectations for Julian Akwara, and does Ajomo's workload improve, or is he strictly a run stuff guy? Akwara, I think, is fighting for one of those roster spots. I saw someone putting that off ball recently. I don't think he'll be an off ball, just judging his history. Mind design, I think he's going to be an edge kind of player. I think it depends on how they, like, I don't think the back end of the roster, like, they're not, Jalix Hunt's a 3rd round pick. He's going to be on the roster. But I mean, like, Zach Bond could be beaten out theoretically. Like, you can't just lock him in as if he's the guy. But I do think that he's got a leg up on everybody. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, Julian Akwara, there's a few of these guys that came in kind of in that process that could potentially win that role. I don't like the Parker or Campbell acquisitions. I'd like to see someone start a wide receiver 3. I like Campbell. You just got to stay healthy. I think Campbell actually makes sense there, adds the speed to your team, can run the underneath stuff. It's a good yak guy. He can get you that yardage. I don't think he's the permanent solution, Philly 416. I mean, I think he's a stopgap measure, someone you're using to plug up that situation for a year or so. I think eventually Aeneas Smith is going to be the guy. I think that's what they're looking at. But I mean, he's got to show it on the field too. I think we should just calm down with the recency bias, let these guys prove themselves. Yeah, Fitness Warrior saying it's not just depth, it's quality depth on paper. Yeah, I agree. The secondary is very exciting. Like, it's been a while since I think we felt this kind of like, this kind of excitement for probably 22. 22, I kind of liked the secondary low key, but I knew that we'd be in trouble if someone got injured. But yeah, I think this is a far deeper group than what we had in 22. Philly team's winning enough just to get my hopes up. Yeah, China. I think they all toy with us like that. Maddox is great when he's playing. I believe he's a top 5 nickel corner when healthy. Just tired of the consistent availability issues. Yeah. I think we're all in support of you in that regard. Philly 416. think we're all in agreement. All right, guys, we've been rocking out for over an hour. I'm going to jump off of here because I know my wife just finally finished cleaning up the tubes and stuff for the baby. So, yeah, we're going to have to, I'm going to jump off, guys. But I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do another live stream tomorrow, guys. Hey, let me get Witch King. What's up, Witch King? I just saw your comment, buddy. So did you hear about the Australian giant we signed, a 6'5", 300-pound, 20-year-old kid? I don't know if I did. I know they signed an offensive tackle, right? I don't know if he was Australian or not, Witch King, but I heard they signed an offensive tackle that's supposed to be intriguing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see how it all works out. I mean, Stoutland has been known to work magic. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all, man. I'll see you guys tomorrow night.